generations. And now, the power of two restores the one.
We got a bidet. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I am talking about probably what a lot of people are talking about, and that is the new Terrifier movie. If you are not aware what this movie is, it is very well known for its gore, and in my humble opinion, it's very charismatic main character. I absolutely love the Terrifier series. I was a big fan watching the first and the second movie, and I was very, very excited for this one. And I will tell you, I absolutely loved the third movie. Not only does it, not only do we get to see more of what we really love about Art the Clown, but we also get a little bit more of the lore added in there, and his character is expanded upon, and so it's a really, really cool thing. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give you some non-spoiler opinions and maybe answer some questions that are non-spoiler as well. Give it a rating, and then I'm going to talk about the movie itself. So, some of the questions that you may be wondering. You may have seen the report that came out that said, like, at a premiere, 11 people left the movie theater, nine of them within, like, the first 15 minutes because they were just disgusted by what they saw. I want to address that because I feel like those must have been people that have not seen the other movies. Because, in my opinion, the first 15 minutes or so, the second movie had done things way, way worse than that opening sequence. So I'm not saying that I was disappointed by the opening sequence, but the hype that surrounded it, as a Terrifier fan from before, I kind of felt like that wasn't quite the up and beyond what I was anticipating it to be, especially with the people being utterly sick. Is it disgusting? Yeah, it's pretty gory, it's pretty gross. But I also think Terrifier 2 was a little bit more higher scale on the grossness as far as that stuff. So that's one thing I want to talk about. Um, Two, I kind of answered this with that question, but how is the gore? Is it more gory than the second one? I would say it definitely has its fair share of gore. I would also say though, I don't think the gruesomeness is beyond what happened in the second one. There's a scene in particular that I remember from the second one where he just annihilates this girl in her bedroom. And that's kind of like the pinnacle kill, I think, in this series as far as how gross that they've been. And I don't quite think anything really tops that, but there is a scene that is, I would say, similar to that scene and a slight callback. But that is not to say that there isn't other creative kills in this movie that push the envelope, right? So just because they're not as gory, it doesn't mean that they're not things that you can't take your eyes away from. So there's definitely a lot of there's more creative kills in this one, even if it doesn't quite top the gruesomeness, if that makes sense. So uh, again, still really, really good, even if it's not quote unquote topping the gruesomeness. Still very, very gory. Uh, Third thing that I would say about this, the second movie was pushing more and more of, adding some actual lore to this character. Because if you've seen the first one is basically, this stalker clown guy, and he just torments a couple of people throughout the night. There isn't a lot of substance to who he is and what's his motive. And the second movie, we did get a decent amount of that with, learning about the Art Krispies, the cereal, and all the kids on his little playground and stuff. And there's this, I don't know if I'd say paranormal, but maybe like sci-fi side of things where the main character from the previous movie, like had a sword, like cut his head off and stuff. Like there was a bit more story element to it. And we expand on that here with this movie. So I think that was great. I think the movie will live up to the hype. It is a cool watch. I feel like the pacing was the best it's ever been for this series. I felt at times with the second movie, there was a couple of spots here and there that kind of slowed down the film, but in this one, I feel like it actually hit on all cylinders. We bounced back and forth between our main character Sienna, which is from the previous movie, and Art the Clown himself at a very, very good pace. I never feel like we are away from either one too long, and then we eventually, meet for a great finale at the end. So all around, I think there's a lot of good stuff going on here, especially if you're a fan of the Terrifier series. Now, if you've never seen any of these movies, you're probably going to go into this movie and be like, what is wrong with the people that like this movie? There's a chance because it is extremely gory. But what I will say to that also is I don't think if you're new to the series, you should jump into the third movie. You should start with the first ones and then, move your way up. And that way, when you get here, I mean, it kind of goes back to what I said in the beginning. The people that were super grossed out probably haven't seen the other ones. And if they did, I don't really understand where that issue was. But so yeah, I really liked the movie. Uh, I feel like it lived up to the hype. The couple of questions I answered that I brought up that were non-spoiler, we covered those. So I'm gonna go ahead and give the movie a rating, and then we'll talk about what happened in the movie. And bear with me because there's a lot of out there things that happen in this movie, but they're creative and crazy, and I think that's what makes the movie great. So I I was really contemplating what I was gonna rate this movie because I'm kind of on that fanboy hype, and I was trying to think long and hard about okay, if we sit down and we think about this movie. Was there anything wrong or things I didn't like about it? There was one small thing that was kind of confusing, and I'll talk about that when we get to the spoiler section. But overall, I really had no complaints. I think that if I really had to reach out there and grab something, and this is even, in my opinion, not super significant, like I said, in my opinion, they did not top the gruesomeness from the second one. Like they didn't take that a step further, but the creativeness was still there. So I feel like I can't fault the movie with that. And even though this rating doesn't mean it is a perfect film, I still think this movie is an absolute 10 out of 10. I feel like the Terrifier series is kind of like our generation's stamp on on the horror genre for films, and I'm really hoping that we get a lot more, especially with this quality down the road. I know there's supposed to be a fourth movie that they've been talking about. They kind of talked about like, well, we could end it on the third, or we can get another fourth. I'm pretty convinced they're going to go for a fourth here based on what happened. But I want more than that. Even Friday the 13th was supposed to end on the fourth movie. It was called The Final Chapter. And then they found a way to bring him back. I do know from what I've read online that the director and writer really doesn't want the franchise to basically get away from what it was. Like if you expand it too far out, maybe it'll lose its identity a little bit. Um, but if we get through the fourth and there's potential for other ones, I want those. So like I said, I'm at a 10 out of 10. This is one of my top movies of the year. Could be partially because I'm a huge fanboy about the movie, but with that being said, I also didn't find any flaws with it. So, yeah, I'm going to transition to the spoiler section here. So this is kind of your time to click away if you do not want to know what happened in the movie. But here we go. So the movie opens with a Christmas scene, and I I feel like the shot from the trailer wasn't in the movie, but I could be wrong. But we open the movie with the family and um, the mom and the dad, everybody's in bed, but the daughter, she's maybe like 5 or 6 years old. She hears something and it sounds like something on the roof. So just like any other kid would do, she goes to wake up her parents and say, "Hey, I hear something on the roof." And the mom's like, just go back to bed. The dad, has to get up at 6 o'clock or whatever it is, 3 hours from then. And he's like, just please go take care of our daughter. And so the mom takes the daughter back to bed and is explaining to her, because it's not quite Christmas yet, supposedly, or because I thought they said it was a couple days before. The mom was saying that there are elves that come and check on the house to make sure, like, Santa will fit through the chimney, the um, the cookies and milk are out, and all that stuff. Basically, making sure the boxes are checked for the Christmas season. And so the mom goes downstairs, puts out a plate of cookies and milk, and when she goes back to bed, she tells her husband, just make sure when you get up in the morning, eat the cookies. That way, the daughter gets that facade. And so the girl or the mom, when she's doing the cookie stuff, she does hear something up on the roof. She goes back to bed anyways. She thinks it's a little weird. But the daughter hears the noise again too. So the daughter gets out of bed and she goes downstairs and she sees Santa, which we know is Art the Clown. But she sees Santa. She's avoiding being seen, and Santa goes upstairs. Santa goes into her brother's room first, and off camera, we hear um, the killing because when she first sees Art, he's in front of the Christmas tree. He has his sack full of toys, and he takes out an axe. And he takes the axe upstairs, chops up her little brother, and then goes into the parents' room. He hacks away at the husband, and once he's like 3 or 4 hacks into him, the mom wakes up. Mind you, it's been like 10 minutes, so there's no way that she fell asleep that fast. But she wakes up, she sees there's like blood on her arm because, her husband is bleeding out all over her, and she runs for her life. Art chases her. Eventually, he does kill her. And after he kills her, he's looking around the house and he notices that something's a little off. He opens up a cupboard, and that's where the little girl is. And us, as the audience, we're left to wonder what happened to that little girl because it cuts away. So now we're at 5 years ago. So the movie then backtracks. And from what I remember, I feel like it's where the second movie left off because Art's head is chopped off. It's just a limp body. There's a cop going through the building, and the cop finds the body, and the body comes alive and kills the cop. And the body takes the cop's head, holds it on top of its body, and makes its way. I think, I think it's a subway. I don't think it was a train. I think it's a subway. But basically, he was on his way to go and find Victoria, which is locked away. Victoria is the character from before that had the burnt face. If you remember from the first movie, she was like in an interview, and then she killed the interviewer that was interviewing her. Um, but she's giving birth. Yes, she's giving birth to Art's head. And we see this umbilical cord and everything. And basically, they kill a couple of the guards and they, cut the head away from her body so that they can now take the cop's head off of Art's body and put Art's new head onto his original body. So then they hop on a, again, I think it's a subway. They see someone dressed up as Art. It's kind of funny. He thinks that the actual Art and Victoria have amazing costumes and takes a picture of them. But Art and Victoria eventually go to this abandoned house. And Art goes upstairs. He goes to a window and he sits in a chair. And then Victoria goes and lays in a bathtub and she slits her arm and then just sits there in the bloody water. Um, and it kind of seems like they're like frozen in time. They're not actually frozen, but they just stay there, lifeless, essentially. Uh, then we come back to present day. We see Sienna, and she is um, being let out of a mental institution. She has been going there because of the incident with Art the Clown in the past. She is being picked up by her uncle, and she's going to go live with her aunt, uncle, and her cousin Gabby. Um, when she gets there, it seems like everything is, well with the family. Gabby is basically obsessed with Sienna. She absolutely loves her. It to me, it seemed kind of awkward when she hugged her aunt. It seemed like something was going on there, but I'm not 100% sure. Um, we do learn a couple of things about the family as they're having interactions. I know when they're around the dinner table, the uncle talks about how Gabby is very nosy during Christmas time. She finds the Christmas gifts that are around the house, even if they're under a rug and under some floorboards. She also takes gifts out from under the tree and unwraps them, sees what they are, and rewraps them. The parents make it apparent that they know that she does that because the gifts are wrapped poorly when she puts it back under the tree, which this does play a role later on. Um, but we also learn that Sienna is having some very, very bad PTSD where she is seeing her dead friends, like she's hallucinating them, and her friends are saying, it's all her fault that her friends were murdered by Art the Clown. And so we kind of see that struggle that she's been having. She also writes in her diary every now and then about all of her instances, trying to put her thoughts on paper and, trying to let that stuff out without having to talk to somebody. She doesn't want to tell her cousin Gabby. She doesn't want to tell her aunt and uncle. I think she doesn't feel that they would really understand as far as the aunt and uncle. And of course, Gabby is really young. She might be in high school, is my guess. And so she doesn't want to get her wrapped up in that either. Back to some stuff with Art. We see a demolition van approach the house that we saw that Art and Victoria went to, and they are surveying the house to see, if they need to be essentially bulldozing this house and getting rid of it. And when they enter the house, it's, nasty cobwebs, rats on the floor. One of the dudes actually jokes to the other that it used to be the house of somebody that would kidnap and kill children and bury them in the basement. Um, if which may, maybe I don't remember, but I feel like that very well could be a true story, even though he says that it's all fake. Just because we know from the previous movie that Art did a lot of things with children. He had the commercial thing, he had the cereal, the playground, all the crazy stuff. But uh, one of them goes upstairs, one of them goes downstairs, and the one that goes downstairs eventually finds Victoria's body in the bathtub, and he's like, "Oh no, like no way, I just found a body," kind of a thing. But she ends up killing him. She takes a shard of glass, stabs him in the throat, and he dies. And then she makes her way upstairs because she's now like reawakened basically by the guy. Um, the second guy goes upstairs and finds Art in the chair, still gazing out the window from 5 years ago, and basically reawakens Art. And so uh, Art makes or starts beating him up, and Victoria makes her way upstairs, and it's really weird because Art is like, you know, doing his thing to this dude, and Victoria is using the glass shard to pleasure herself to Art killing this guy. Um, and like I said, I think this probably was the closest to the over the top deaths from before, because Art basically takes like a box cutter and cuts up the dude's head all the way down and then like rips his skin off of his head just to leave his skull, and so he's like screaming for his life without his skin, and so it's pretty gory. I think it's like I said, I think that's kind of what is the closest to the gruesome stuff before, but mind you, there are very, very creative things down the line, so we'll get there. So now that they're reawakened, they're kind of back to their normal shenanigans, and getting back to their thing. And we'll learn a little bit more about why Victoria is all part of this in a little bit. So eventually, Sienna wants to reach out to her brother, Jonathan. Jonathan was in the second movie as well. Now he is in college. I think they said it was like 5 years or something. Oh, yeah, it was 5 years because the 5 years ago was when they encountered him first, and then she's been in a mental institution for 5 years. So, yeah, there's a little bit of a time jump for Jonathan. Now he's in college. His roommate girlfriend has a podcast, like a true crime podcast, and she recognizes him and basically says, "Hey, do you mind being on the show? Our most popular episodes is when we talk about what happened with, this Art the Clown." And he basically says maybe. He doesn't tell her no, doesn't tell her yes. He's not too sure how he feels about it. His roommate does try to stick up for him, saying like, "Hey, he doesn't want to relive that stuff." But again, Jonathan doesn't say no. He just says he'll think about it. So we learned that about him. We cut to other scenes with Sienna and Art. It kind of juggles its way around these characters in a very, very nice flow. We see that Art is actually creating a new weapon. He's creating what I would say like a cooling machine. It's kind of like a fire extinguisher, but it shoots out like super cold air, maybe even dry ice. I'm not quite sure. But it basically freezes something pretty instantly, and then he learns that he can just smash things after it's frozen because he practices it on a rat. And then after he does that, he feeds it to the other rats, which was pretty nasty. So we learned that about him. Then we learn some more about Sienna. Sienna is having these dreams about her dad, and her dad either, if I remember, or if I picked it up correctly, I think he was a comic book creator, and if not, he just made really cool drawings and stories and stuff. And Sienna would tell her dad that it's disappointing that he always keeps making these amazing male characters, but there's no female characters for what we can pick up on is that there's none for her to identify with. And so the dad eventually says, I've been working on one. I haven't quite, found or made the perfect one yet. And eventually, because I think the thing is two separate dream sequences, but I'm going to put them together here. Um, he pulls out a picture eventually during one of these dreams, and when he shows her the picture, it's actually the cosplay outfit that she wore from the second movie. So that's a pretty cool connection there. Um, that she, was essentially one of her father's created characters in the previous movie. But also, what he tells her is that, this character is stronger than any other character that he's ever created, and that she can defeat any evil. Eventually, Sienna also learns that uh, kind of what is going on with Art the Clown, and she wants to share that with her brother. So she tells her brother that um, Art is basically a demon that needs a host. And whenever the demon is, or whenever the demon finds a host, there's also angels that find hosts as well. It's kind of like a balance. It's kind of like the light side and the dark side from the sequel trilogy of Star Wars in a way, not gonna lie. Um, but uh, she tells him about this, and just cool information for him and also cool information for us now that we kind of have some more lore behind that stuff. Also in those dreams when the dad goes to hand the picture to Sienna, he like freezes and it seems like he has like these visions of what's going to happen in the future. So it's kind of like her dad almost knew about Art the clown and all the stuff that's going to happen to her later in life. Um, but my guess is he kept it to himself. We get a pretty cool scene with Art the clown. So Art is walking around town and he stumbles across a bar, and there's these two people at the bar, one of them being someone dressed as Santa Claus. And Art is super excited. He wants to meet Santa. And so he goes into the bar with his trash bag and everything. And, he approaches Santa and he points at the Santa on the wall. And the guy basically is making sure he stays in character as Santa because he believes that everybody deserves that facade when they are excited to meet Santa. And so he plays Santa and they play along with each other. And Santa says that he wants to buy a drink for Art. And so Art takes a drink of the alcohol and spits it all over Santa, which upsets everybody. And so now Art is kind of uh, in defense mode basically because they try to rough him up a little bit even though the bartender is like hey you can't do that to him, and so he goes into his bag of stuff, pulls out a gun, shoots the bartender, shoots Santa's friend, and then he doesn't shoot Santa but he does tie Santa to a chair. Before he ties him to the chair, he takes off his Santa costume, so now Art has that costume and he plays with his new cooling weapon with the Santa character. And eventually, what this boils down to is uh, the guy that was playing Santa when he met Art was saying like you're not Santa without the beard. You got to have the cool beard. And so what Art does is he freezes the dude's face and smashes it a couple of times with a hammer and then takes the beard off of his face. So the beard that Art is has in the movie is from another Santa Claus. That's pretty brutal. Um, let's see. Eventually, Sienna takes Gabby to the mall. They're out shopping, and Sienna sees a Santa Claus go by, and it's someone dressed as Santa, but they're wearing a mask. So it actually looks like Santa. But the gloves that the Santa is wearing is Art the Clown's gloves. And he stops and he looks at Sienna and he gives her a little wave and then he keeps on going. And so she thinks that she's hallucinating, but she's also super freaked out. And she tells Gabby, like, hey, we gotta go. You know, because she doesn't want to be around that area. She's freaked out that she just saw Art the Clown. So they leave the mall, and we're left with Art because Art sees the Santa um, setup at the mall, where kids take pictures with Santa. And the actual Santa goes on break, and so Art the Clown decides to take it upon himself to plop himself in the chair. And he has his bag with him. He puts it down by the Christmas tree. And a little girl sees him. They're waving at each other, and he tells her to come up to him. And when she comes up to him, he looks in his little toy bag and he pulls out a doll and he hands her the doll. So all the kids are like, oh my God, Santa's actually handing out gifts. And so all the kids rush Art and he's, taking out toys. Even the kids are reaching into the bag and grabbing toys themselves. And one of the kids grabs a what looks like a present. So most of these toys were already unwrapped for the kids to grab and play with, but there was one that was still wrapped. And when the kid goes to open up that package, um, it's a bomb and it explodes and kills a bunch of children, kills some other people, and this makes the nightly news, which is where Sienna hears about it. So Sienna and Gabby get back home, and The Sienna is offered a bowl of cereal, and Gabby says, well, she doesn't like cereal anymore. However, Sienna's never told anybody that she doesn't like cereal, and so she says to Gabby, "How about we go play a board game upstairs?" And so when they go up there, she goes, "I never told you that I didn't like cereal." And come to find out that Gabby has been reading Sienna's diary, and she literally read everything. So she knows about Art the Clown and the struggles that Sienna's going through. And so, um, yeah, now she knows that stuff. So when they go back downstairs to go and play the game, that's when the dad is seeing the news on TV. Sienna sees it, and then that's what freaks her out. She's like, "That's not a hallucination. I actually did see him." And now, um, she's terrified because she knows that he's around and he's gonna try to find her. And so she wants to call her brother. She calls her brother and um, tells her about what she witnessed and mentions that she has to go back to the Terrifier. I did not remember what that was. Um, we don't actually see her go there because the next time we see her is that she's coming through the front door with um, a wrapped present that is supposedly for Gabby, and so she puts it behind the tree. Gabby even says, "Is that for me?" and scares Sienna. I think what us as the audience knows what that thing is. That's the blade from the second movie, which is wrapped up in the box, right? So it's there if she needs it. Um, a little while later, Um, the uncle takes off so he can go pick up Jonathan, so that he can be with them. But also during this time, Art the Clown shows up to that college dorm area. I can't remember if it was a or a frat house or if it was an actual dorm, but um, we get a brutal death for uh, Jonathan's roommate and his girlfriend. This one was pretty creative as well. They're basically doing it in the shower, and Art the Clown comes up in there and hacks away with his chainsaw and has a heyday, needless to say. And then we cut back to uh, the the house with Sienna and the family, and Art the Clown arrives there, and he knocks Sienna unconscious with a mallet, and she wakes back up. She's tied to a chair. And when she looks across from her, there's something that's under I think it's newspaper. It looks kind of like a cloche in a way, the way that the paper is around it. Her aunt is directly across from her, also tied to a chair. And when she looks at the Christmas tree, that's where her uncle is. So her uncle was chopped to pieces, and his head is the Christmas tree star on top, and it's got stuff throughout the tree as well. So yeah, just to put that lightly. And so uh, eventually, Victoria is there too. She comes out, and Victoria is looking more and more like Art the Clown, like the paint on her face. She doesn't look just like, the burns that she had from before. She's actually starting to get the white paint and everything. And this is what I had kind of wondered is if this host that is using art is also using Victoria. Like, is it a demon that can have multiple, like, minions, quote unquote? Um, I don't know. And so she decides to torment Sienna a little bit by killing the ant. And the way that she does this is they take a big plastic tube, they shove it in her mouth to the point where, in my opinion, that probably would have killed her. But then when they reveal what's under the clothes, they were telling her that it was Gabby, the younger cousin, but really it was Jonathan's head. And in that little under the clothes was a cage with the head, and inside there were some rats. My guess it's the rats from their house. And so what they do is they put the rats in the tube to go down into the ant's body, and they would light the torch to make them want to get out of there. Pretty classic thing with buckets on stomachs, but this is a whole new take on that. But instead of having the rats try to claw through the entire body, eventually they slice her throat, and then the rats go down through the tube and out her neck. So that's pretty gruesome. But what this is leading to is that Victoria wants to pass on this like possession idea onto Sienna. And we see Sienna's eyes like start to turn orange and stuff as this process is happening. Um, they also bring out Gabby that to show Sienna that Gabby is alive, but basically they want Sienna to cooperate and say, "Hey, you're going to cooperate with this process, and we won't hurt Gabby," even though us as the audience, thinks that knows that that's not possible. Um, so that process is happening where Victoria is trying to possess Sienna, and Gabby outbursts saying that it would basically be a shame that Sienna didn't get to open up her gift from her for Christmas. And Victoria agrees. And so she says, "Which one is it?" Gabby says, "The one with the angels." Us as the audience knows that that was supposed to be Sienna's gift to Gabby, but Gabby is saying it is Gabby's gift to Sienna. And so they grab that present, they put it down by Sienna's feet. Art takes a hammer and smashes uh, Sienna's hands just to make it hurt even more to pick up that package. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention, because this is, in my opinion, this is so random, but it's so funny. Like all of us in the theater, it wasn't like the annoying laughing people that laugh at horror movies and take the fun out of it. It was like this was legitimately a funny thing that was happening in the movie. And it's every time Art walked back and forth and passed by Sienna, he would just smack her upside the head. It was really, really weird, and it was so weird that it was hilarious. And so I wanted to throw that in there just because I thought it was funny. I didn't want to, I want to make sure his character is shown throughout this as well. But yeah, he smashes her hand, so it's harder for her to open the box and it hurts more. She's not opening the package as fast as Victoria and Art want her to. And so he like hits her a couple other times, like on the shoulder and stuff. But eventually she opens up this box and it is the blade, as we thought. And she uses it to kill Victoria, chops her head off, and then she starts fighting with Art. And it's a really, in my opinion, it was a really good sequence. And in my opinion, I think that the lead actress that plays Sienna, Lauren Lavera, I think she is well on her way to being an iconic scream queen because she was amazing in this movie. Um, I think she really, really played the hero character very well. We see her, going toe to toe with Art. I 100% believe that she has it in her to, combat this dude. She's fighting with the sword. He's fighting with the chainsaw. It's a really, really good action sequence. Um, but what this eventually gets to is that she stabs Art a couple of times, and we kind of see the things happening with his eyes that maybe the demon is trying to hold on to the last piece of life that Art has. But when Victoria died and her blood spilled all over the ground, it melted a hole in the ground and it was kind of like an abyss. I kind of deemed it as like a gateway to hell in a way. And Gabby was holding on for dear life because she fell in the hole, but she was holding on to the edge. And I thought this was really dumb in a way, but it might pay off later on. And this is, I'll tell you why in a minute. So Sienna uses the sword and gives Gabby the handle side, and so Sienna is holding onto the blade with her bare hands, and she's wanting to pull Sienna up. Now, the sword is sharp. You would think it would just slice through her hands, and then, there would be no chance of saving Gabby. So that's kind of what I was thinking. Ultimately, the sword does slip and cut her hands, but Sienna, or not Sienna, Gabby falls into this pit with the sword. And so I'm kind of wondering because when Art had Victoria, there was two demons. And it made me wonder if that means Sienna and Gabby are the two angels. Because maybe the reason why that used the sword and it ended up being what Gabby took with her into this unknown area, maybe it's because she's an angel and she can use that sword to fend off the demons that are down in that pit. Um, while this is all happening, Art escapes. He runs out of the house through a window, and Sienna looks at her hands and she notices that, there's the cuts in her hands from trying to bring Gabby back up, and her hands heal. And so that's another thing of, does she have this like mysterious power that Art kind of has with this regenerative stuff as well? So, um, they're expanding on the lore with this, but I also think there's a little bit of mystery that we will be learning potentially in the fourth movie, because this is the reason why I think there's going to be a fourth movie is that Sienna says that she's basically going to find Gabby. She's not going to leave her behind. And then the movie ends where Art goes to get on a city bus, and he seems very out of it. He has his bag. There's a person on the bus, and the bus driver kind of like, who the heck is this guy? And he seems very out of it, but then all of a sudden his eyes pop up and they're like super white again, just like when he was possessed. And has his wicked smile, and then the movie cuts. And so, for one, that's why I think there's going to be a fourth movie, but um, also, he's not dead. He's still around. Sienna is still around, and there's this struggle between them two. So I think it's one of those that uh, he wanted to kill Sienna before, but he wasn't victorious. So if he's able to kill her, then he can be satisfied. I think he's not going to be done until he's satisfied from all that he's done. Couple other things you can see behind me. We got some new iconic glasses. In the second movie, he had some sunflower glasses that I've actually seen people wearing out in public. So it's catching on. These might catch on as well. Maybe we'll see some of those around the holiday season. Um, but I just want to say overall that this movie, I thought it was great. Like I said, the flow was great. The characters were great. The acting was great. I really, really liked Sienna's character in this. I feel like her brother was sidelined a little bit. It seemed like he had a much less role than the second movie, because the second movie, you remember, he was obsessed with Art the Clown and he really wanted to know the ins and outs of the story of these murders from this clown and stuff. And this movie, I feel like he wasn't nearly in it as much. But yeah, really, really good performance by Lauren Lavera. Also, David Thornton, which is Art the Clown. Fantastic performance by Art the Clown. Art the Clown doesn't talk. Victoria talks, and that's another reason why I think that they're kind of connected through the one demon, because I feel like Art is the mute character for this demon, and I think Victoria is the vocal character for this demon. So I think they kind of play well together with that. Um, but yeah, because Art is mute, you have to communicate with all expressions essentially. When you play charades, it's super hard to get people to guess what you're doing because you're not used to being mute. You're not used to being um, over the top and explaining with what you're doing. And so I think that this character was super super well done with Art the Clown this time, and I very much look forward to the fourth movie whenever that does come out. So. That is my talk on Terrifier 3. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Drop us a like if you liked the video, and drop us a comment letting us know if you've seen the movie, what your thoughts were, and if you haven't seen the movie, uh, are you interested? It's definitely a movie where you have to be able to stomach it. It's very, very gory, but like I said, It's also very creative and very entertaining. So, uh, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.